guys, Anna over here, and welcome back to the 12 dramatic readings of Christmas. Today we are going to be opening and reading and looking at our second book. So I have it wrapped up in like some old music sheet. Well, I'm gonna go set these. Let's just set these up here for now. So yeah, let's just open this up. It's Josefina's Surprise. You can't read it because my camera flips it, but it's Josefina's Surprise, a Christmas story from 1824. The book wasn't written then, but it takes place at that time. So yeah. And it's got a picture of Josefina on the cover in her little Christmas dress. So yeah, let's get into the dramatic reading. Josefina's Surprise, a Christmas story. Written by Valerie Tripp, illustrations by Jean-Paul Tibbles. Chapter 1. Christmas is coming. The wind was playing with Josefina. First it made her skirt billow out behind her and the ends of her rebozo fly up like wings. Then it twirled around and pushed against her back, hurrying her along like a helpful but impatient hand. Josefina smiled. She could see that the wind was playing with her sisters, and Tia Dolores too. They looked like birds with ruffled feathers as they were blown along the road on this blustery morning. Josefina, her three sisters, and Tia Dolores were on their way to the village, about a mile from their rancho. The road ran between the stream and the fields and under tall cottonwood trees. The trees were bare now. The wind-swept fields were wintry, stubbornly brown. It was December. Christmas was coming, and today everyone was gathering to clean the church so that it would be ready to decorate. Josefina's papa had gone ahead with a burro loaded with wood for Christmas bonfires. The sisters and Tia Dolores would join him and their friends and neighbors at the church. "Oh!" exclaimed Francisca, exasperated. The wind was blowing her hair so that it curled wildly around her face. Francisca was Josefina's second oldest sister. She was very careful about how she looked, especially when she was going to the village. She pulled her rebozo up over her head and tried to hold it in place with one hand as she struggled to carry a basket with the other. Josefina didn't care if her hair was wind-blown. She slipped her arm under Francisca's basket. "I'll carry this," she said. "Gracias," said Francisca. She let go of the basket and held her rebozo tightly under her chin with both hands. Josefina glanced at the bright red chilies in the basket. "Why are you bringing these?" she asked Francisca. "They're for Senor Sanchez," said Francisca. "Don't you remember, Josefina?" asked Ana, her older sister. "Mama always gives Senor Sanchez some of our chilies at this time of year. Senor Sanchez Senor Sanchez claimed she couldn't make her traditional stew without them." "Oh, that's right," said Josefina. "I remember." Tia Dolores smiled at Josefina. I'm eager to taste Senor Sanchez's famous stew," she said. "I'm glad Christmas is coming soon." Josefina could only manage a very small smile in return. She saw that Clara, her next oldest sister, was frowning. Ana and Francisca didn't look very enthusiastic either. Tia Dolores looked at the sisters' faces. "What's the matter?" she asked. Ana answered, "When Mama was alive, Christmas was always happy," she said. "But last Christmas came soon after Mama's death. All we could think of was how much we missed her." Tia Dolores spoke quietly. "It must be very hard," she said. Josefina slid her hand into Tia Dolores's. She knew that last Christmas must have been hard for her too. Tia Dolores had been far away in Mexico City when Mama died. How sad and lonely she must have been. Tia Dolores was Mama's sister, and she missed Mama as much as Josefina, Clara, Francisca, and Ana did. A few months ago, Tia Dolores had come to stay on the rancho to help Josefina's family, and for that Josefina was grateful every single day. "Last year, Christmas was very quiet," said Francisca. "There were no parties or dances out of respect for Mama. No one felt like celebrating anyway." For a while, the sisters and Tia Dolores walked without talking. They were all remembering last year and wondering what this Christmas would be like. Josefina listened to the stream as it splashed over rocks and around curves. The stream flowed steadily and carefully. Josefina wished she could be as carefree about the holiday that lay ahead. She asked Tia Dolores about one thing that was worrying her. "Would it be wrong to be happy this Christmas?" she said. "Would it be disrespectful to Mama?" "No, I don't think so," said Tia Dolores. "The year of mourning has passed. Christmas is a blessed time. I'm sure God means for us to be happy and to celebrate the birth of His Son Jesus." She looked down at Josefina. "And I'm sure your Mama would want you to be happy. She'd want you to pray and sing and celebrate with your friends and neighbors." "Sí," Ana agreed. "Mama would want us to follow all the Christmas traditions." "I think so too," said Francisca. "Well," Clara said flatly, "we may follow the traditions, but they won't be the same without Mama." Somewhere inside Josefina, a knot tightened. Clara is right, she thought. Mama loved Christmas traditions. Josefina said to Tia Dolores. "She even started a new one in our family. Every Christmas she'd make a doll dress for... "Oh, Josefina!" explained Anna, interrupting. "You're talking about Nina, aren't you? Nina should have been given to you last Christmas." "But she never was," said Josefina. Tia Dolores looked puzzled. "Who's Nina?" she asked. Anna explained. "When I was 8, Mama made a doll for me. She named the doll Nina. Every Christmas, Mama made a new dress for Nina. Then, the year Francisca was 8, I gave her Nina too." "See," said Francisca. "And the Christmas when Clara was 8, I gave Nina to her." "Of course, last year Mama was not here to make a dress for Nina," said Anna sadly. She turned to Clara. But you could have given Nina to Josefina anyway, Clara. What happened?" Josefina was curious to hear Clara's answer, but Clara only shrugged and said, "I guess I forgot." Never mind, Clara," said Tia Dolores. "You can give the doll to Josefina this Christmas. I'll help you make a new dress for her. Where is Nina? I've never seen her." "I haven't seen her in a long time either," said Francisca. "Neither have I," said Josefina, looking at Clara. "Oh, she's around somewhere," said Clara. Her voice sounded unworried, but just for a second. A troubled look clouded her eyes. The look came and went so quickly, Josefina thought she must have imagined it. Francisca, who messily liked to tease Clara, who was neat. "Heavens," she said. Do you mean to say you've lost Nina?" "She's not lost," said Clara crossly, kicking a pebble with her shoe. "I told you, she's around somewhere. I'll look for her when I have the time." "Would you like me to help you look?" Josefina asked. She didn't want to make Clara more cross, but she really did want Nina. "Christmas is coming soon, and—" "I know!" said Clara sharply. "I don't need any help. I'll find her." "Of course," said Clara sharply. "I don't need help. I don't need any help. I'll find her." "Of course you will, Clara," said Tia Dolores. Tia Dolores sounded so sure that Clara would find Nina. Josefina wished she could be as sure. How could Clara possibly have misplaced something as precious as Nina? Where could the doll be? At that moment, Josefina made up her mind. She was going to look for Nina herself, no matter what Clara said. After all, Nina was supposed to be hers. Josefina's decision to look for Nina cheered her. She couldn't help feeling a little hopeful, just as she couldn't help feeling a little excited because she heard music. Josefina quickened her steps. The music was faint but clear, floating up from the village. "Listen," said Tia Dolores. They all lifted their faces and listened. The music grew louder and stronger. It seemed to urge them, "Come along, come along." Soon they were all walking so They were all walking so fast, they were practically dancing. Josefina's thick braid bounced against her back, and even sensible Clara skipped a little bit. The sound of the music mixed in the air with the spicy scent of burning pinon wood. As they came to the village, they saw smoke rising up from the chimneys into the cloudless blue sky. It was a small village. Josefina knew everyone in all of the 12 families who lived there. She knew their houses too, which were built close together and seemed to lean toward each other like old friends. The houses were made of earth-colored adobe. They were surrounded by hard-packed dirt, fenced pens for the animals and vegetable gardens, now sleeping under bumpy winter blankets of brown dirt. Most of the houses faced the clean-swept plaza at the center of the village. The biggest and most important building in the village was the church. It was 1 story tall, except for the front, where the bell was hung high above the doors. Today, the doors of the church were wide open. People scurried in and out, carrying brooms and brushes, tools, and scrubbing rags. They hauled big, sloshing tubs of water up from the stream. Buenos dias. It's good to see you. How are you today? Everyone called out when they saw Tia Dolores and the sisters. Buenos dias. We're very well, thank you, they called back, over the sound of the music and the noise of dogs barking and hammers pounding. People were talking, and every once in a while, Josefina would hear swoops of laughter from the little children as they chased one another. Clara, Francisca, and Ana went inside the church to start working, but Tia Dolores and Josefina lingered outside next to the musicians. Yes. One man was playing a guitar and 2 others were playing violins. As Josefina and Tia Dolores listened, the music changed. The men began to play a slow, sweet song. All the noise and conversation seemed to fade away for Josefina. All she could hear was the music. "I haven't heard this lullaby since I was a child," said Tia Dolores. She hummed along with the music for a moment, and then she asked Josefina, "Please, will you sing it for me?" Josefina nodded. Very softly, she began to sing. "Sleep, my beautiful baby. Sleep, my grain of gold. The night is very cold. The night..." Josefina's throat tightened, and she couldn't finish the song. She turned her head away and looked down at the basket of chilies she was carrying, so that Tia Dolores wouldn't see that her eyes had filled with tears. But Tia Dolores had seen them already. She put her hand under Josefina's chin and gently turned her face toward her. "Mama used to sing that lullaby to me when I was little," said Josefina. and we always sang it together at church on Christmas Eve to baby Jesus. Tia Dolores used the soft edge of her sleeve to dry Josefina's cheek. Then she asked, "Does everyone sing it?" "Everyone sings the end," said Josefina, "but not the first part. That's sung alone by the girl who is Maria in Las Puertas." "You know," said Tia Dolores, "you're old enough to be Maria." "Oh, I couldn't," said Josefina. Her heart pounded faster at the very thought. Las Puestas was one of the most important and holy Christmas traditions. For 9 nights in a row, everyone in the village acted out the story of the first Christmas Eve, when Maria and Jos were searching for shelter before baby Jesus was born. A girl took the role of Maria, riding a burro just as Jesus' mother did, and a man took the role of Jose. Maria and Jose and their followers went from house to house asking for shelter. Again and again they were turned away, until finally they were welcomed into the last house on Christmas Eve, the final night of Las Posadas. Everyone was welcomed into the church instead of a house, and then midnight mass began. "Sometimes," said Tia Dolores thoughtfully, "a girl wants to be Maria because she wants to pray for something special. I wonder what your prayer would be, Josefina, if you were Maria." Josefina did not have to wonder. She knew what her prayer would be. I'd pray that this will be a happy Christmas," said Josefina. "For us and for Mama in heaven." Tia Dolores smiled. "That's a good prayer," she said. "And are you sure you don't want to be Maria?" Josefina listened to the last notes of the lullaby. Part of her wanted to be Maria. Part of her knew she couldn't do it. "Last year I could hardly sing the songs at Las Posadas," she said. "They made me so sad because they reminded me that Mama was gone. I'm afraid it'll be the same this year." She shook her head. "I couldn't possibly be Maria." "I understand," said Tia Dolores. "It's still too soon for you." She tucked a strand of Josefina's hair behind her ear. "Let's go now." Josefina nodded and walked into the church with Tia Dolores. The church was usually quiet, solemn place, and dim because the windows were very small and set deep in the thick walls. But today it was busy and noisy. Light poured in from the open doors and peeked through gaps in the roof where it had been damaged in the storms that fall. Everywhere Josefina looked, she saw friends and neighbors and workers from Papa's rancho who'd put aside their usual chores to come and clean the church. Senor Sanchez, Senor Lopez, and several other women chatted together as they swept. Josefina saw Papa's sister, Tia Magdalia, with a group of women who were polishing candlesticks. Ana, Francisca, and Clara were in a group of girls who were dusting. Boys who were supposed to be scattering water over the floor to settle the dust were splashing each other. Most of the men of the village stood together, their arms crossed over their chests, looking up at the roof and discussing the damage caused by the storm in the fall. Josefina saw Papa standing with the men. Then Papa excused himself. "There you are," he said to Josefina and Tia Dolores. "I was looking for you." "We stopped outside to listen to the music," Tia Dolores explained. "I might have known," Papa said. His eyes twinkled. "You two are the musicians in our family." Josefina could tell that Papa's compliment pleased Tia Dolores, because she blushed a little. "Well," she said, "we're ready to work now." "Good," said Papa. He caught the eye of Senor Garcia, who came over. Senor Garcia was the mayor domo. It was his job to assign tasks, because he and his wife took care of the church. Senor Garcia was an old man, thin and stooped, with very white hair. He had a husky voice and stately manners. Everyone respected him for his knowledge and liked him for his kindness. "God bless you," Senor Garcia said to Tia Dolores and Josefina. "I'm glad to see you. We need good, willing hands like yours to help. I'm afraid the storm has made our work harder than usual, and the roof caused terrible damage when it fell in. We have a lot to do before the priest comes on Christmas Eve. Will you two help with the sweeping?" "We'd be glad to," said Tia Dolores. "Gracias," said Senor Garcia. Then he turned to Papa. "May I ask your family to wash and iron the outer cloths, as you have done for many years?" "Of course," said Papa. "I remember when your dear wife gave that cloth to the church," said Senor Garcia. She'll be in our prayers this Christmas, I'm sure." "Si," said Papa quietly. Senor Garcia turned to Josefina again. "Josefina," he said, "I was wondering if you would like to be Maria in Las Posadas this Christmas. Perhaps to offer a special prayer for your mama." Josefina froze. Papa looked at her, waiting to hear her answer. Tia Dolores put her arm around Josefina's shoulders. "It's very kind of you to ask, Senor Garcia," she said, "but I think not this year." I see, said Senor Garcia gently. Perhaps next year. Well, Margarita Sanchez can be Maria this Christmas. Josefina didn't say anything. Just for a moment she leaned into Tia Dolores' arm, grateful for her understanding. Then she went to find Senora Sanchez to give her the basket of chilies. The morning flew by so fast that Josefina was surprised when Senor Garcia called everyone together for the closing prayer. May God accept our work here today as a prayer of thanks for his merciful love, he said. Amen, said everyone together. Josefina said her goodbyes and walked out into the sunshine with her family. She had enjoyed sweeping and listening to the sing-songs of the women's voices as they gossiped and chattered around her. It had been nice to be part of the friendly group, all scrubbing and sweeping and dusting together. Because of their work, the church shone. But now Josefina headed home with eager steps. She was determined to begin looking for Nina that afternoon. Chapter 2. Where is Nina? Josefina closed her eyes and tried to picture Nina. The last time Josefina had seen her, Nina was wearing a pale blue skirt. Her arms and legs were flat because some of her stuffing had fallen out, and her black yarn hair was tangled. Josefina clearly remembered Nina's lively black eyes and smiling pink mouth, and she was pretty sure she had remembered a green sash tied around Nina's waist. I'll keep my eyes sharp for any bit of green or black or pale blue, Josefina thought. Nina has to be somewhere. The first place Josefina looked was in the room she shared with Clara and Francisca. Standing on tiptoe, Josefina ran her hand along all the high shelves built into the walls. She looked in corners, under blankets, and behind the trunk that Clara and Francisca kept their clothes in. No Nina. Josefina opened the trunk to search inside. Clara's clothes were folded neatly and stacked in precise piles. Josefina looked between them and under them, but saw nothing. Francisca's clothes were loosely folded and piled in the trunk, in such a haphazard way that Josefina had to dig through them. She did find a missing stocking and a broken button and a hair ribbon that Francisca had loudly complained about losing. But she didn't find Nina. Josefina sat back on her heels and sighed. Where is Nina? She wondered. It was a question she asked herself hundreds of times that a day as Christmas came nearer. No matter where she was or what else she was doing, Josefina was looking for Nina. She'd start searching early in the morning when the snow on the mountains still had its cool blue glow, and she wouldn't stop until late in the afternoon when the sunset made the snow look rosy. Josefina's eyes searched the sala when she knelt there first thing in the morning for her prayers with her family. Every time she walked to the stream to fetch water for the day, she looked around, hoping to see Nina hiding behind a rock or nestled at the foot of a tree. She explored every nook and cranny for the storerooms, the stables, and the chicken coops as she did her daily chores. She looked at the kitchen while she made biscotto cookies, and in the courtyard while she waited for the bread to bake. She looked in the cradle where she rocked Anna's baby son to sleep. She looked in the weaving room behind the looms, in the stacks of finished blankets, and in baskets full of wool waiting to be carded and spun in. Still no Nia. In desperation, Josefina even searched the goat's pen. You haven't eaten Naya, have you?" she asked her old enemy, Floracita. The yellow-dyed goat looked at Josefina, blinked once, then turned away. Josefina tried hard not to be discouraged, even though she soon felt as if she'd searched every inch of the rancho. Then one day, Josefina and her sisters and Tia Dolores were invited to Senora Sanchez's house. Josefina was glad to go. She knew that Clara and Margarita Sanchez used to play dolls together. Maybe that's where Nina was. At least it was a new place to look. "Buenos dias. Please come in," said Señorita Sanchez as she welcomed everyone to her house. Almost all the women and children from the village were there. The women had brought with them scraps of cloth and paper. They were using them to make flowers for ramelettes to decorate the church on Christmas Eve. Tia Dolores had brought some yellow material that was left over from the new dress Josefina had made for herself. Senora Sanchez was a stout, good-hearted woman who was well known for being generous and neighborly. She'd been a special friend of Mama's. They used to visit back and forth to share food and news and advice. Senora Sanchez always had time to sit and talk, and yet she seemed always to have something delicious cooking on the hearth, and her house was as neat as a pin. Mama used to say she didn't know how Senora Sanchez did it. But Senora Sanchez's house wasn't neat today. The women were gathered in the kitchen around the bright jumble of colored scraps. Josefina searched the kitchen with her eyes, hoping to see Nina. There was no doll to be seen, but Josefina couldn't help smiling at the pile of finished ramelettes. It looked as if a flower garden were blooming right there in the middle of Senora Sanchez's kitchen. Josefina turned to Tia Dolores. "The ramelettes remind me of the flowers Mama planted in our courtyard," she said. "Josefina, your Mama would be pleased with the way you've cared for the flower she planted," said Tia Magdalia, who was Josefina's grandmother. All the women murmured in agreement. "Things grew well for your mamma," said Senora Lopez. "Of course they did," said Senora Sanchez, "and no wonder. She used to say to me, 'You must treat flowers like people.'" The women nodded, and Senor Garcia's wife said, "Well, she certainly treated people kindly. Look how beautifully her daughters are growing." Senora Garcia turned to Tia Dolores. "And you've done well to teach the girls to read and write and encourage them to weave." Tia Dolores smiled. "They've worked very hard," she said. Josefina felt a warmth that came from more than the fire and the hot, sweet mint tea Senora Sanchez served. She had known these women all her life. As far back as she could remember, they'd helped her when she was a flat-legged toddler, always underfoot and always down just like the toddlers there today, and always falling down just like the toddlers there today. They'd known her when she tagged along watching Clara and Margarita play dolls back before Nina disappeared. When Mama died, all these women had lost a dear friend. Josefina knew they'd never forget Mama, any more than she herself would. "Look!" said Francisca. She held a cloth flower behind one ear. It was made of a yellow material that Tia Dolores had brought. Francisca twitched her skirt and twirled around gracefully, as if she were dancing. Everyone laughed. Anna said, "The flower looks pretty in your hair, Francisca, but it'll look just as pretty in the church on Christmas Eve. We'll put the ramalettes in an arch over the altar," said Senor Garcia to the girls, "and we'll put the cloth your mama made on the altar." "Didn't she have a fine hand for clochia embroidery?" said Tia Magdalia. "No village in New Mexico has a lovelier Christmas altar cloth." Senora Sanchez turned to her daughter, Margarita, who was going to be Maria in Las Posadas this year. "Sing for us, Margarita," she said. Sing the lullaby we always sing on Christmas Eve." Josefina held her breath while Margarita sang. "Sleep, my beautiful baby, sleep, my grain of gold." And everyone but Josefina joined in. "The night is very cold. The night is very cold." This time the lullaby didn't make Josefina cry. Instead, as she listened, Josefina thought, "A song like this must go straight up to God like a prayer." With all her heart, Josefina wished she had the courage to be Maria in Las Pratas this Christmas. But with all her heart, she was sure that she did not. The December afternoon was short. The weak winter sun slid down behind the mountains early, and it was nearly dusk when Papa came to walk home with Tia Dolores and the sisters. He had been to the church to get the trunk that had the Christmas altar cloth in it. Senora Sanchez beckoned to Josefina. "Come with me," she said. "I have something for you and your sisters to thank you for the chilies." Josefina followed Senor Sanchez outside. She was very surprised when Senora Sanchez handed her a little cage made out of bent wood. Inside the cage there was the plumpest, prettiest black and white hen Josefina had ever seen. "Oh, Senora Sanchez," Josefina explained. "Gracias." Senora Sanchez beamed a generous smile. "She's a vain little hen, very proud of herself, I'm afraid," she said. "But she has a reason to be proud. She lays very fine eggs. I thought you and your sisters could raise her chicks to increase your flock. I know you'll take good care of her." Josefina thanked Senora Sanchez again. She held up the cage to look at the hen, who puffed herself up and met Josefina's gaze with her beady black eyes. Then Papa strapped the hen's cage onto the burrow next to the trunk from the church. He and Tia Dolores and the sisters began to walk the long walk home. "Adios," the women called out after them. God keep you well." Josefina turned and waved. "Adios," she called. It had been a long, full day, and Josefina was tired. As she walked along next to Clara, she said happily, "The ramelettes we made will look beautiful in the church, won't they?" "I suppose so," said Clara rather sourly. "Of course, no one will know how to arrange them as nicely as Mama used to," she sighed. "Oh well, at least the altar cloth will look all right. It will be the way it used to be." When they were home at the rancho, Papa carried the trunk into the kitchen and set it down near the fire. "Wait till you see Mama's altar cloth," Josefina said to Tia Dolores. "The birds that Mama embroidered on it look so real. You expect them to sing." Tia Dolores smiled. She knelt next to the trunk. Papa and all the sisters crowded around, peering over her shoulders. As she lifted the lid, Tia Dolores lifted the altar cloth out of the trunk, and they all looked at it. For a moment, no one said anything. Then Papa pulled his breath in sharply, as if something had hurt him. Without a word, he turned and left the room. Josefina was confused. What was this torn, bedraggled cloth in Tia Dolores' hands? This cloth looked like a rag. It was chewed by mice. It smelled of mildew. It was water-stained and dirty. It couldn't be Mama's beautiful embroidered altar cloth. But it was. "Oh, no," said Anna, sounding miserable. "Water from the flood must have rotted the leather of the trunk so that mice and dampness got in." Just look at the damage that's been done. It's ruined! Clara cried out. It's ruined, just like Christmas. She rushed out of the room. The door slammed behind her, and the whole room and everyone in it was shaken. It wasn't like Clara to act like that. Her words echoed in Josefina's head. It's ruined, just like Christmas. The knot inside Josefina tightened again. Just when Josefina had begun to hope that this Christmas might be happy, this had to happen. The beautiful altar cloth Mama had made so lovingly was destroyed. It hurt Josefina to look at it on Tia Dolores' lap. Tia Dolores unfolded the altar cloth slowly, never minding the dirt and mildew that soiled her skirt, and the more she unfolded it, the more damage Josefina saw. Francisca lifted one corner using just the tips of her fingers. Just look, she said. It's in shreds. Anna sighed. I'm glad Mama is not here to see this, she said. It would break her heart. Tia Dolores didn't say anything. She examined the cloth carefully, running her hands over it. Then she said, I think we can repair this. Anna, Francisca, and Josefina looked at each other. But how? Asked Francisca. First, we'll wash it, said Tia Dolores. Then we'll iron it. We'll mend the embroidery wherever we can. But what about the embroidery that the mice chewed away? Asked Anna. We'll replace it with new embroidery, said Tia Dolores. Francisca looked doubtful. We'll need Clara for that, she said. Mama taught us all colcha embroidery, but Clara is the best. Clara's the best. She's the only one who's even close to doing colcha as well as Mama. Very well, said Tia Dolores. Josefina, please go to Clara and ask her to come back so that I may speak to her. Josefina nodded. Quickly she crossed the courtyard to the room she shared with Francisca and Clara. The door was partly open, and through it Josefina heard the sound of Clara crying. Josefina stood still, not sure what to do. As she hesitated, she looked into the room. It was dark, but Josefina saw Clara open the clothes trunk and take out an old skirt that was neatly folded into a thick bundle. Clara unfolded the skirt. Josefina saw a bit of something pale blue and a flash of green, and there was Nina. Josefina gasped in surprise and bewilderment. Clara had Nina! The doll had been in Clara's trunk all this time. Josefina took one step into the room, then stopped short when she saw Clara bury her face in Nina and sob. Clara cried as if her heart were broken, and held on to Nina as if the doll were her only comfort in the world. Josefina turned away quietly so that Clara wouldn't hear her. When Josefina got back to the kitchen, Anna and Francisca were gone. Tia Dolores was alone, still holding the altar cloth. Is Clara coming? Asked Tia Dolores. I don't know, stammered Josefina. Tia Dolores looked confused. She asked, Didn't you speak to her? No, said Josefina. Suddenly she burst out, Tia Dolores, give her to me. Will Nina ever be mine? Tia Dolores sighed. I don't know, she said. No one knows, probably, not even Clara. It may take a long time. She put Josefina's hands aside and picked up the altar cloth again. Just as it'll take time to repair this altar cloth. But we'll do it. The sooner we begin, the better. Tia Dolores tried to tease a smile out of Josefina. What do I always say? She asked. Josefina had to smile just a little bit in spite of Clara and in spite of Nina and in spite of herself. You always say the saints cry over lost time. Precisely, said Tia Dolores briskly. We'll start tomorrow. Chapter 3. The Silver Thimble. And they did start repairing the altar cloth the very next day, everyone except Clara. Josefina helped Tia Dolores wash the altar cloth in warm soapy water and rinse it in clear cool water. Gently, Tia Dolores wrung out the cloth. Then she and Josefina spread it to dry in a sunny corner of the back courtyard. When the cloth was dry, Anna ironed it smooth, being careful not to scorch it with the hot irons heated by the fire. Francisca helped Josefina mend some of the holes that mice had chewed, and Tia Dolores cut off the end where the holes were too big to mend. She attached a new piece of material in its place. At last the time came to begin the colchia embroidery. Tia Dolores and the four sisters gathered in front of the fire as they did everything. Tia Dolores spread out the altar cloth. What shall we embroider? She asked, looking at the sisters. Josefina looked at the altar cloth. Firelight brightened the colors of the designs that Mama had stitched. Josefina had an idea. Wait, she said. Very quickly she went to her room and found her memory box, the little box in which she kept things that reminded her of Mama. She brought the box back to the fireside. Mama made the altar cloth, she said. I think we should embroider things on it that she loved. Maybe the things in my memory box will give us ideas. Josefina opened her memory box, and Francisca took a swallow feather out of it. Mama loves swallows, Francisca said. I'll embroider swallows and other birds on the altar cloth. Anna took a bit of lavender-scented soap out of the box. She smelled it. I'll stitch sprigs of lavender, she said. Mama loved its scents. And I'll embroider leaves and flowers, said Josefina as she took a dried primrose out of her memory box, because Mama loved them. And what will you embroider, Clara? Tia Dolores asked. Clara was only halfway in the firelight. She looked at the altar cloth with critical eyes. Doesn't matter, she said. We can't make the cloth look right again without Mama anyway. We can, said Tia Dolores firmly. It'll take time, but we can repair it. And if we all work together, I think we'll even enjoy doing it. Clara drew back out of the light, but Josefina saw her face. She looked as sad as it did in the moment Josefina had seen Clara holding Nina and crying. Suddenly, Josefina felt sorry for Clara. "Doing the colchia embroidery makes me miss Mama too, Clara," Josefina said. "It makes her seem very far away, doesn't it?" Clara didn't answer. "Perhaps this will help," said Tia Dolores. She reached in her pocket and took out a silver thimble. "Your mamma gave this to me a long time ago, when we were girls. She was trying to teach me how to do colchia. I didn't like it because I kept pricking myself with the needle, and it hurt. She gave me the thimble to protect my finger. Now all of you may use it to protect your fingers." Clara leaned forward on her stool. She looked at the thimble and then at Tia Dolores. If Mama gave something like that to me, I'd keep it forever," she said. "I wouldn't dream of giving it away." "Just like Nina," thought Josefina with a heavy heart. "But it makes me happy to share the thimble," said Tia Dolores. "When we use it, we'll think of your mamma with every stitch we make. Perhaps it will make her seem closer, not farther away." "Oh, please, may I use it?" Josefina asked. Tia Dolores handed the silver thimble to Josefina, and she put it on her finger. It looked shiny in the light of the fire. As she began stitching, Josefina used the thimble to help push the needle through the cloth. She knew Clara was watching her. When Josefina started to tie a knot at the end of the wool she started using, Clara moved next to her. "Don't!" said Clara. "Have you forgotten? Mama said never to knot the wool. Use your second stitch to hold your first stitch in place. Here, let me show you. I'll stitch the stem of the flower for you." Clara spread the cloth over her knees and took the needle from Josefina. She began to stitch. Francisca nudged Anna, and Anna raised her eyebrows at Josefina, as if to say, "This is a surprise." Josefina took the thimble off her finger. "Use this," she said. Clara stopped for a moment and looked at the thimble. Then slowly she took it from Josefina and slipped it on her own finger. "Gracias," she said, but so quietly only Josefina could hear her. Josefina gave herself the job of untangling knots in the wool Tia Dolores was using. When she looked up a little while later, Josefina saw that Clara had finished stitching the stem and was embroidering a yellow blossom on the end of it. Josefina saw that Clara's stitches were smooth and sure and secure. She also saw that Clara hadn't taken the silver thimble off her finger. On a still, cold evening a few days later, Tia Dolores and the sisters were working on the altar cloth in front of the fire. "Francisca," said Josefina, "that chicken you're stitching looks just like The pretty little hen that Senora Sanchez gave us." Francisca groaned and pretended to be annoyed. "It's not supposed to be a chicken," she said. "It's supposed to be a sparrow." She held the altar cloth up so that Tia Dolores, Anna, and Clara could see it, too. "What do you think?" she asked. "Can we pretend that it's a very fat sparrow? One that clucks instead of singing?" teased Josefina. They all laughed, and Clara said, "I can fix it for you. It just needs the feathers smoothed out a bit." "Gracias," said Francisca. She let Clara take her needle with relief. Anna had been wearing the silver thimble, but now she handed it to Clara. "You'll need this," she joked. "Francisca's chicken might peck at you." Tia Dolores was right, thought Josefina, as they all laughed again. "We are enjoying working together to repair Mama's altar cloth. I remember when Mama taught me to do clochia," said Clara. "She told me, 'You'll like clochia. You have hands that need to be busy.'" Tia Dolores and the sisters smiled at Clara's memory. Josefina watched Clara stitch and admired, as she always did, the way the silver thimble shone in the firelight. The four sisters and Tia Dolores worked on the cloth almost every evening, and it was a time Josefina looked forward to. They took turns wearing the silver thimble. Francisca made a game out of it. She said that whoever wore the thimble had to share a memory about Mama. Sometimes the memories would make Josefina sad, but sometimes they made her laugh because they reminded her of happy times. Just as the thimble protected Josefina and her sisters from the pain of being pricked by the needle, it seemed to also protect them from the pain that memories of Mama used to bring. Repairing the altar cloth was slow work, but as the days went by, stitch by stitch, the cloth became beautiful again. And as the days went by, bit by bit, Josefina began to feel better about all the things this Christmas might bring, even though she was now quite sure Nina was not going to be one of them. Before they knew it, Christmas was only 9 days away, and it was time for Las Posadas to begin. On the first night of Las Posadas, it was snowing slightly. When Josefina and her family walked to the village, Papa led the way, holding a lantern high to light the road. When they came into the plaza, Josefina could see hot orange sparks from the bonfires rising up to meet the cold white snowflakes. The biggest bonfire was in front of the church. Almost all their friends and neighbors and all the workers from Papa's rancho had gathered around it. Everyone greeted the Montoyas when they joined the circle, and their breath puffed clouds into the sharp air. As Josefina watched Margarita Sanchez climb onto the burro and settle her skirts around her, she thought Margarita would be a very fine Maria. Because it was the village tradition, Margarita's papa was being Jose. He led the burro to the first house, and everyone sang, and everyone followed. He knocked on the door, And they all sang, "In heaven's name we ask for shelter." And the people inside sang back, "This is not an inn, be on your way." At first, Josefina didn't even try to join the singing. She hung back, expecting to feel the same heavy, ice-cold weight of sorrow she'd felt last year. Back then, she had missed the sound of Mama's voice so much that the music had been painful to hear. But tonight the music wasn't painful. It sounded gentle and familiar. Josefina listened very hard. It seemed to her that the music helped her remember the sound of Mama's voice, and so she was glad to hear it. Josefina looked at the faces that surrounded her. She saw Senor Garcia's thin, kindly old face and Margarita Sanchez's young, round face. She saw Ana, Francisca, and Clara with snowflakes clinging to their hair. She heard Papa's voice, so low she could feel it inside her. And Tia Dolores' voice, strong and clear. It was a comfort to be surrounded by these good people who had loved Mama too. "Oh, Mama," Josefina thought, "we all miss you so much." Somehow the thought made missing Mama easier to bear. Josefina shivered, but it was the beautiful music that made her shiver, not the cold or sorrow. And she listened. Josefina thought about how people had been singing these same songs at Las Posantas for hundreds of years. They sang to honor God and to remember the first Christmas when Jesus was born. Josefina thought back to when Mama taught her the song so that she could join in the tradition. She remembered all the Christmases when she and Mama had taken part in Las Posantas together, and the memories were both sad and sweet. Tonight, the last house the procession went to was the Sanchez's family's house. This time, after the people outside asked for shelter, the people inside opened the doors wide. Josefina saw Senora Sanchez's good-natured face in the doorway and heard her sing louder than anyone else. "Come in, weary travelers, you are welcome." Josefina grinned. No one could doubt that Senora Sanchez truly meant the welcoming words from her heart, and Josefina meant it too when she and the others sang their thanks in return. "God bless you for your kindness, and may heaven fill you with peace and joy." Then everyone crowded inside for prayers and more singing before the party began in the Sanchez family house. The air was spicy and delicious aroma of meat pies and tamales, and of course, some Senora Sanchez's famous stew. Josefina saw Clara and Margarita warming themselves by the fire. They were looking at the ramelettes, and Clara was holding a scrap of yellow cloth as if she were planning to make more flowers. Her face looked happy and eager. Josefina thought that Clara must be feeling the same way she was, as if a heavy burden had started to slip away. Chapter 4. La Noche Buena. Every day was colder than the one before, and Christmas Eve day was bone-chilling. The sky was dark as stone from dawn till dusk, and sleet fell without stopping. Josefina's hands were stiff as she and Clara put the final stitches in the altar cloth. Late that afternoon, at last the cloth was finished. Tia Dolores held one end and Anna held the others so that they could fold it carefully. One of the flowers Clara had embroidered ended up on top. Tia Dolores stroked the flower gently. "Clara," she said, "you have your mamma's gift for embroidery. Truly you do." "I can't tell Clara's flowers from those mamma made," agreed Anna. A quick smile lit Clara's face. She took the silver thimble off her finger and held it out to Tia Dolores. "Thank you for sharing this with us," she said. Tia Dolores didn't take the thimble. Instead, she said, "Perhaps Josefina will let us keep it in her memory box. It'll be handy there." "See," said Josefina. "Go ahead, Clara. You can put the thimble in the box. It's on the shelf in our room." But Clara put the thimble in the palm of Josefina's hand and then curled Josefina's fingers around it so that it was held tight in her fist. "No," Clara said. "I think you should go and put it in your memory box, Josefina." "See, put it safely away," said Tia Dolores. "And Clara, you'd better go too. It's time for you girls to change your clothes." She smiled. "It's Christmas Eve." Josefina and Clara hurried across the courtyard to their rooms. Francisca, who shared the room with them, had finished dressing. She'd left a small candle in the room to give Clara and Josefina light to dress by, but as they came in, it seemed to Josefina that the room was illuminated by more than just one single candle. Josefina smiled when she saw why. Someone had laid out Josefina's mantilla, comb, and best dress on top of the trunk. The pretty yellow dress brightened the whole room. Josefina walked toward it, then stopped, stared, and gasped in surprise. For there, sitting on top of her yellow dress, was Nina. Josefina lifted Nina up. She saw that Nina's face looked just as she remembered it. The eyes Mama had sewn out of the black thread still looked lively, and the mouth Mama had sewn out of the pink thread still smiled sweetly. Nina's yarn hair was smooth and untangled. Her arms and her legs were plump with new stuffing. Best of all, Nina had a new yellow dress that exactly matched Josefina's. It had a long skirt and long sleeves gathered in puffs up near the shoulders. Nina even had a tiny new mantilla like Josefina's, and pantalettes and a petticoat. Josefina hugged Nina and kissed her soft cheek. "She's yours," said Clara. "Oh, Clara!" Josefina whispered. "Gracias!" She hugged Nina closer. "I thought she never would be." "Why not?" said Clara. I knew that you had her," Josefina admitted. "And You knew? Interrupted Clara. See? Answered Josefina. Why didn't you say anything? Clara asked. Well, said Josefina, Tia Dolores told me that you needed her. Very slowly Clara nodded. I did need her, she said. I thought she was all I had left from Mama. But now I know I have Mama's gift for embroidery, and I'll never lose that. Josefina touched the smooth ribbon around the high waist of Nina's dress. Did you make this dress for Nina? Josefina asked. Si, said Clara. I wanted to carry on the tradition that Mama started. Josefina smiled broadly at Clara. Nina's dress is beautiful, she said. I think maybe you have Mama's gift for making doll dresses too. Clara smiled back. Then she looked lovingly at Nina. I went to Nina for comfort because I thought I had nowhere else to go, she said. But now I know that there's comfort all around me if I need it. See, said Josefina, I'm finding that out also. She opened her fist, and the silver thimble shone in the candlelight. I'll put the thimble in my memory box so that we can share it, Josefina said to Clara. And we'll share Nina, too. She'll sleep between us from now on. Christmas Eve was called La Noche Bonino, the good night. And this Christmas Eve felt like a very good night to Josefina. Nina was hers to love and care for at last. The weather was still sleety and cold to Josefina. So Josefina wore the rebozo crisscrossed over her chest and tied behind her waist under the outer blanket. She wore for warmth. She tucked Nina inside her rebozo and held her tight as she and her family walked to the village. It was later than usual because tonight Las Puestas would end at the church, and the priest, Padre Simon, would begin Mass at the stroke of midnight. After Mass, everyone would stream out of the church into the frosty blackness and wish each other Feliz Navidad, Happy Christmas. Then there was going to be a party at the Garcia's house. Josefina knew there would be music and dancing and a wonderful feast. Anna was bringing a silver tray piled high with sweet bizcochitos cookies like Mama used to make. Josefina hugged Nina in anticipation of it all. A big bonfire glowed gold in the darkness in the front of the church. Josefina was glad to see it. She was glad to go inside the church, too, where it was dry. Sleet had beaded her blanket as if it were covered with thousands of tiny pearls. Josefina took the blanket off and took it just inside the door of the church. She checked to be sure that Nina was held safe in her rebozo, then hurried to catch up with Papa and Tia Dolores and her sisters. They were near the altar with Senor Garcia and other friends, and neighbors who had come to decorate the church. Tia Dolores gave the altar cloth to Senor Garcia. Gracias, gracias, said Senor Garcia to Tia Dolores and the sisters. I am told that all of you had to work hard to repair this. God bless you. Everyone is grateful, added Senora Lopez. Now our altar will be as beautiful as it has been in past years. Padre Simon is on his way, said Senor Garcia. Some men from the village have gone to greet him and lead him to the church. Perhaps we had better begin to decorate. Soon it will be time to start Las Posadas. Only a few candles were lit. Most were being saved for when Padre Simon would say Mass. The church was shadowy, and Josefina felt as if she and the others who quietly set about decorating were preparing a lovely surprise. Josefina helped Papa and Senor Lopez arrange pine branches around the little wooden stable that was part of the nativity scene. The branches smelled fresh with the tang of mountain air. Then Josefina helped put the carved wood figures from the nativity scene in their places. She helped spread the cloth on the altar and smooth out any wrinkles. Ana and Francisca and a group of girls had just finished arranging the colorful ramulets in an arch over the altar when Senora Sanchez hurried into the church. She looked distressed. "Pardon me, Senor Garcia," she said breathlessly. "I'm afraid I have bad news. My daughter, Margarita, is ill. She must have caught a cold from being outside on these bitter nights. She is too ill to be Maria tonight. She can't stir from her bed." "Poor Margarita." "Poor Margarita," said Senor Garcia. Everyone dropped what they were doing and gathered around Senora Sanchez and Senor Garcia. They shook their heads and murmured, "Oh, the poor child, bless her soul." Josefina's heart beat fast. She asked herself a question and thought hard about the answer. Slipping one hand inside her rebozo so that it was touching Nina, Josefina used the other hand to tug gently on Senor Garcia's sleeves. Senor Garcia turned to her. Josefina's voice was small but steady as she looked up at him and said, "Please, Senor Garcia, may I be Maria?" Everyone looked at Josefina as she went on. "I'd like to pray that this will be a happy Christmas for us and for Mama in heaven." Senor Garcia's thin old face was solemn. Slowly he nodded. "See, my child," he said to Josefina, "you may be Maria." Josefina turned to Papa. "Will you be Jose?" she asked him. "I will," said Papa gravely. He didn't smile, but he looked at Josefina with pride and love. Tia Dolores did too. When it was time, Josefina handed Nina to Clara for safekeeping. "Please hold her for me," Josefina said. "Keep her warm." Clara took the doll. "I will," she promised. They all went outside. The wind was blowing hard, driving the sleet so that it stung Josefina's face. Papa lifted Josefina up onto the burro's back. She knew Senor Sanchez's burro was gentle, but still she felt very high off the ground. Josefina was glad Papa would be taking would be walking at her side, leading the burro. She took the reins and held on tight. A gust of wind made her skirt flutter. Papa was wearing an extra blanket over his serape. He took it off now and said, "You'd better wear this over your own blanket. It'll keep you warm." "Gracias," said Josefina as Papa wrapped her in the blanket. It covered her from head to foot. As the villagers gathered to begin the procession, many people stopped to speak to Papa and Josefina. Gently they touched Papa's shoulder or Josefina's foot or the end of the blanket Papa had wrapped around her. "May God grant you a good and long life," they said. Josefina tried to sit up straight as she could on the burro's back. Then, with a slow clop-clop of the burro's hooves on the frozen ground, they moved to the first house. Papa knocked on the door, and they all sang. "In heaven's name we ask for shelter." And the people inside sang back, "This is not an inn, be on your way." Josefina's voice was unsteady at first. She felt nervous and stiff because she was self-conscious. But as they had on every other night, the lovely music and words made Josefina forget all about herself and her shyness. After a while, Josefina was singing the Las Posantas songs in a voice that was full of all the hope and happiness of Christmas. Papa led the burro from house to house at each house. He and Josefina and everyone with them sang, asking for shelter, and at each house the people inside sang back, telling them to go away. Then everyone inside the house came out to join the group behind Papa. After the last house, Papa turned back to the church. By that time, everyone in the whole village and all the workers from the rancho were in the crowd. Josefina felt as if everyone she knew and loved in the whole world were there behind her. When they got to the church, Papa knocked on the doors. Boom, boom, boom. The sound echoed inside. Then everyone sang, "Maria, Queen of Heaven, begs for shelter just for one night, kind sir." Padre Simon opened one of the church doors just a bit. He looked out and sang, "Come in, weary travelers, you are welcome." Then Padre Simon flung both doors open wide. Golden candle light flooded out. The church bell rang and everyone sang, "God bless you for your kindness, and may heaven fill you with peace and joy." Papa lifted Josefina down off the burro. She was glad for his strong arms because her legs felt wobbly and cold and numb. The big blanket Papa wrapped around her was weighted down with a coat of sleet, but when she took it off, her own blanket underneath it was dry. "Josefina!" she heard someone whisper. It was Clara, who handed Nina to her. Josefina tucked Nina safe inside her rebozo again. Then Tia Dolores took Josefina by one hand and Papa took the other, and They walked into the church behind Padre Simon. Anna, Francisca, Clara, and everyone else followed. Josefina could hardly breathe. The church was so beautiful. She felt as if she were walking into a dream. All the candles were lit. Their brightness made the candlesticks shine, and their polished wood glowed. The polished wood glowed. The candles cast a warm light on the nativity scene in its nest of pine branches, and on the delicate ramilets arched gracefully above the altar. But to Josefina, the most beautiful thing by far was Mama's altar cloth. Perhaps it was because she knew and loved every stitch of it after working on it for so long with Tia Dolores and her sisters. In the wavering candlelight, the soft flowing leaves and flowers seemed to be floating in a gentle breeze. And the colors were rich and true. Josefina looked at the newly embroidered flowers with pride. Mama would be pleased, she thought. By now the church was full of people, and Padre Simon began the Mass. When it was time for her to sing the beginning of the lullaby, Josefina stood up, closed her eyes, and sang. Sleep, my beautiful baby. Sleep, my grain of gold. Her voice was the only sound in the church, like a bird singing all alone on a mountain top. Then Josefina opened her eyes, and everyone sang with her. The night is very cold. The night is very cold. Josefina listened to all the voices soaring up around her, and she felt as safe and as loved as she used to feel when Mama sang the lullaby to her. Josefina hugged Nina close, sure that her prayer for a happy Christmas had been answered. you guys enjoyed that dramatic reading of Josefina's Surprise, and if you enjoyed this dramatic reading, be sure to check out the previous dramatic reading of the 12 dramatic readings of Christmas. It was for Geronimo Stilton. Merry Christmas, Geronimo, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye!